So good afternoon. Welcome to Thriving Thursdays. We are here today. I'm Charmaine Jackman. I'm the founder and CEO of InnoPsych Inc. And as always, this month we have been bringing social workers to talk to us about social work and the work that they're doing around healing in communities of color. I'm so excited to have Dr. Anthony Estreet with us today. He is a social worker, researcher, entrepreneur. We're going to learn so much about him today. I'm so excited. We already started chatting. So I'm so excited again to welcome you to Thriving Thursdays. Just a little bit, again, we are really honoring social workers this month. So we're excited to have Dr. Estreet with us. We also really honored Women's Month. We're closing out the month as well. I want to just thank you for those for InnoPsych, as some of you may know if you're new to Thriving Thursdays. InnoPsych is an organization that's charged with disrupting racial disparities in mental health. We have a national Therapists of Color directory that's really about making sure that we have access to mental health services provided by therapists of color. And we also really provide engaging community events like this, where we speak about the importance of mental health and really start to deconstruct and figure out how to model and have conversations with our friends and with our family. And so that's what we model here. How do we have those conversations with each other, with families? We all share our own personal experiences with mental health and what got us in this field. Some of you were really helpful in voting for we're running for the FedEx Small Business Grant. It required people to vote every day for companies. And so we thank all of you who voted for us. Really appreciate it. And we'll find out next week if we made the cut in the top 100. Again, this is our beautiful directory. So feel free to connect. If you're looking for a therapist, you can find us at innopsych.com, find a therapist. And if you are a therapist of color, we definitely want you on our website because the demand and the need for therapy services is really increasing. So that's a little bit about InnoPsych. And what we will do right now is kind of just dive right into our conversation. The way that we run this conversation, I will spend some time talking with Dr. Estreet. If you have questions, please pop those in the chat because that helps our conversation as well. So Dr. Estreet, are you ready? You ready for this conversation?
I am ready. I've been looking forward to it all week.
All right. So have I. So one of the things that I always have my guests do is start with kind of what got you into this field. How did you land on social work? And was this something you wanted to do from a kid or you kind of fell into it? So yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey into the social work field.
So my journey is actually pretty interesting, right? So and I guess it kind of all started, back in childhood. Everybody's like, oh, I want to be a doctor, this and third, right? So I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. Fast forward, went into the military after high school, did that. And then after I finished the military, ended up going to college. So I went to college at undergrad at Bowie State University in Bowie, Maryland, 20715. What ended up happening there, I was a psychology major. And it's so interesting how the universe puts people in your lives that you need at that time, right? So I was literally getting ready to graduate, trying to figure out what were my next steps in my life and everything, and then wasn't really feeling the whole 5 years for a psychology PhD thing. So I was like, yeah, no, the undergrad was tough enough. I'm going to take a break for a minute, right? But as I
Yeah.
was getting ready to graduate, one of my frat brothers, and his name is Mike Green. He's a social worker, but he graduated before I did, so we weren't on campus at the same time. Him and I got to rapping and really talking about social work. And what I realized was a lot of the things that I was interested in doing with psychology, I could do with social work, and it was a 2-year degree because I can go get a master's, right? So that was a selling point, but that was much more than just a selling point, right? Because Mike Green essentially became one of my mentors and really, guided me through my process. I still talk to him and use him as a mentor and friend to this day around,
Nice.
issues where, I talk about, things that are going on professionally, personally, all that good stuff. But again, it just speaks to the importance of having mentors and having people that can guide you in that path. I think, in particularly, social work has been a profession that has been dominated by white women, right? So to have another Black male social worker come to me at a time when I was trying to figure out my life and really, pour into me at that time,
Yeah.
speaks volumes into, our connections to each other, but also, how we can connect to the work and mentoring and building the social work profession. So that is the transition from undergrad to grad. And so I went from Bowie State University to Virginia Commonwealth University. So naturally, that was a huge culture shock, right? Going
Ah.
from BCU to a PWI,
Mm-hmm.
and in that space, I was oftentimes one of the only Black people, and most of the time the only Black male.
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself getting asked questions about the Black community as if I was representative of the Black community, and that became interesting. Um, but nonetheless, I finished my program at VCU. I had a good experience there. I met some lovely, lovely, wonderful faculty, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a couple of them I still keep in touch with, who really kind of poured into me and nurtured my vision as a social worker. And then took a year off between my master's program and my PhD program, and then I returned back to HBCU. I ended up getting my PhD from Morgan State University, where I am currently an associate professor in the School of Social Work, and really trying to, pour into younger social workers the same way that I was poured into, to really
Yeah.
shape and nurture their career so that they can go out and make amazing contributions to the profession, to the
Mm-hmm.
community, and really, meet people where we need to be right now.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Again, I always love hearing people's journeys. And it's interesting, you started out as a psychology major. So I grew up in Barbados and we did not have psychology, but I had a wonderful sociology teacher who's a Black man. Most of my teachers were Black anyway. But I turned into this really love for sociology and thinking about community. So it's funny how we swapped. Right? My interest was in sociology when I started out, but then I got turned on to psychology.
Yeah.
But what a path in terms of, like you said, having that mentor who was a man of color, which, like two unicorns, right? At this time, when you were looking to think about what was next and to have him placed right there for you. What a blessing.
And again, so just to show how it kind of how we pay it forward, right? Uh,
Yeah.
he's being modest on the camera right now, but Demetrius Keller is also a young Black male social worker here in Maryland who is connected to Mike Green as well, but also connected to me, and really through our fraternity, really being able to connect on different things. There he is. What's going on, young man? But in the same,
Awesome.
uh, really creating that network of providers that look like us, that have similar experiences that we can also lean on, and really just kind of create that network.
Yeah, that community is so important and building that pipeline, right? So I go talk to college students quite often and sometimes even high school students. And many of them say, they're interested in psychology and sociology, but their families tell them that's not a career, right? That, mental health doesn't exist. So there's so many messages that
Yeah.
our young people are being bombarded with that turns them away from this field that's viable as a career, and we're going to need it. I mean, we've seen the impact of COVID-19, and the demand for mental health services was already there, but it's even more so. So we definitely need you to come into this field. And I have Roberta Green as one of my mentors who we've done some work together as well. So we really have to kind of spread this message around mental health and why it's so important. So, there's so much we can talk about. So let's see. So I really want to get into the research that you're doing around addiction, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your entrepreneurship. So we were just chatting because when I was looking, I was trying to find your social media handles, and I saw this, you're associated with this Black therapy today, and I was like, oh, okay. Then I saw you were the founder. I'm like, wait, how does he have time? I'm like, people always ask me, when do you sleep? So I'm going to ask you, when do you sleep, Dr. Estreet?
you know so you sleep when you can, right? But I think that it's important to talk about the path of entrepreneurship, right? Because a lot of
Mhm.
people get turned away by trying new things. I literally just posted a I think yesterday or the day before on social media, if you tried and failed, congratulations, because most people don't even try, right? And
Right.
I think it's important to also highlight the network and the people that you put on your team. And so remember, I was talking about my friend that I met in the MBA program who is literally getting us geared up with social media. That's Renee
Mhm.
Hampton, who is on right now.
Hi,
And
Renee.
he's literally the brains behind all of the social media, all of
Mhm.
the messaging that we have come across, and really keeps us accountable when it comes to what our messaging is saying and our hashtags. So she does a lot of great things with that. And again, you know, I may be the founder, but it's certainly a team approach, and I honor and respect the team uh, for each of their contributions.
Yeah.
Ebony, who is our chief of operations, she is wonderful in terms of her overall organization. Like
Mhm.
she keeps the strategy and the mission and vision in line, and make sure
Right.
that we aren't straying too far. Because one of the things, if you know me personally, you know that I have a bad habit of really, I can fly off on a tangent most times, and so I do a lot of free flowing. And
Mhm.
Ebony kinds that keeps us together, keeps us organized,
Right.
and really on the point for the Black therapy today. And then again pouring into.
Before Dr. Eastreet, tell us, what is it, Black therapy? Tell us what it is.
So I guess I should say that. So Black Therapy Today is a platform. It's a digital magazine where we are gearing up to launch our first inaugural issue. But it's a digital platform that is really curated for us and by us around Black narratives. I think that, well, this all came about really in the wake of the pandemic, the wake of social justice issues, and for me, I guess I got frustrated and tired with people asking the question, where are Black therapists at? And
Mm.
for me, it was because I know tons of Black therapists, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, no,
Mhm.
we're here, we're doing the work, we are doing the work that needs to be done within our community, and I guess it got to a point where I started looking at and seeing all these various magazines, Psychology Today, Social Worker, this, that, and the third, where there was really no representation of
Mhm.
what we do as Black therapists, but
Mhm.
also how do we address or even begin to approach the topic of Black health, Black wellness, Black mental health in the community without a platform that kind of represents us. And I went as far as to looking into other magazines like Ebony, Vibe, like they have different
Mhm.
sections. Like they may do a
Right.
post on it, but nothing that's really truly dedicated to
Yeah.
the topic of health and mental health within the Black community. And I think that in our group is so diverse in terms of how we think about Black therapy today, and that one of the areas that Renee focuses on is financial health and financial wellness, right? So talk to
Mhm.
the Black community around how finances can tie into health and wellness, how just being able to budget can reduce your stress.
Yes.
And people
Yes.
really felt the strains of money in the financial aspect during COVID, right? When people
Mhm.
were experiencing high levels of unemployment or being laid off or cut back, or just, scared to go to work for what they might come in contact with,
Right.
right? That
Right.
certainly
Right.
created
Yeah.
ongoing, issues with health, mental health, wellness, and really people trying to figure out and navigate how to manage money, how to work in making money work when it's tight. And I
Mhm.
think the other part of it too is it's not just being able to manage. It's not just the money aspect. It's thinking about it from a continuum, right? So prevention. You're ready to move on, like figuring out that whole continuum of health and mental health, and really how to support Black people through that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm so excited and I'm looking forward to one, congrats on your first edition. I know this is going to do well, and please let me know how InnoSight can support it, because I think there's a lot of cross collaboration that we can do together to just get that word out. So
No, for sure.
congratulations. I'm excited. I'm excited for you. Definitely
Yeah, we're
needed.
we are super excited. And the other thing too is again, I want to shout out my team, right? Because um, you know, it takes a lot to do a startup, and it certainly
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot to buy into the vision of somebody when they may not necessarily see the picture. My team has been super supportive, and in fact have been like major champions. You know how people talk about you need to have cheerleaders in your corner? Like they're like, yes, we're going to do this. This is awesome. Like they are ride or
Nice.
die.
Nice. That's amazing. Awesome. Very good. Very good. So again, I know that it's going to do well because it's a much needed resource. So thank you for having the vision to think about that and to execute, right? The execution, right? Can all have these great ideas, but the execution is important.
For sure.
So I want to shift a little bit to learning more about your research. I'm very excited about the topic about addictions. I shared this week about American Psychological Association put out an article which talked about the increase of substance use
Mhm.
during COVID, and I definitely had seen that last year. So tell us a little bit about what you do and then how COVID has impacted it. I mean, there's so many questions, but tell us a little bit about what you do. Give us a snapshot of your research.
So my research holistically looks at ways to improve the Black community when it comes to addressing substance use. So that looks at improving treatment outcomes. So how, you know, when people do engage in care, how can we make treatment much more accessible and people to remain in treatment a lot longer? But also looking at, you know, what are those barriers that are stopping people from uh, engaging in treatment? You know, when we look at a
Mhm.
lot of treatment models, they're very old in that they are from a typically a middle-aged white man's perspective, right? So when we think
Mhm.
about, you know, somebody, African American woman needing to go to treatment, but she also has to figure out childcare. These are real life barriers that we need to
Right,
figure out and really
right.
address in terms of that treatment aspect. I think that for me, the research has to make sense and it has to be meaningful to the larger community, right? So
Mhm.
thinking about how to impact the issue of substance use within the Black community is always at the forefront, um, and that also means, you know, getting creative. One of my colleagues and I, we did a couple articles on the use of hip hop therapy for substance use with youth, and came up with,
Mhm.
you know, intervention that, you know, we've been pilot testing around. You know, what does it look like for Black youth when we start to engage them in a way that is less clinical, a way that's less treatment oriented, in a way that is
Right.
much more meeting them where they are and speaking to them in a language that they understand. So when we use hip hop, we start to dissect and break down music around addressing substance use. You know, it
Mhm.
becomes much more engaging for youth, right? When we tell them,
Mhm.
hey,
Mhm.
you know, these elements of hip hop include graffiti and b-boying, and they're able to dance and move, right? So that's part of African centered kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
paradigm, to be able to dance and move, to be able to draw and connect back to the things you see. So when we talk about, you know, graffiti, which is an element of hip hop, you know, that also, you know, connects people in. You know, I think that our young people are so talented, but typically when they are engaging in substance use treatment, it is often very clinical and not
Mhm.
necessarily to meeting them in a place where they are.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
so really looking at a lot of those issues and trying to basically trying to help the community to address the issue of substance use. I mean, because again, we have very different views, and I'm segueing a little bit, but it's not.
Mhm.
The other, was it last month or a few weeks ago? You know, there was this big hoopla about Dr. Carl Hart and what he said around his use of substances personally, but also um, his desire to provide education for people that are going to use, right? And if we're not getting
Mhm.
so caught up in the shock and awe of it, right? And we're being
Mhm.
completely honest around utilizing a harm reduction approach, we should want to provide education to individuals that
Mhm.
are currently using, right? So one of
Yeah.
the things about reducing, you know, opioid use is certainly, hey, if you're going to use, let me show you how to use in a way that's effective so
Safety.
that you're safe and you're not out here overdosing, right? Because
Right.
the rationale of it is 9 out of 10 times when people overdose, it's by accident.
Mhm.
You know, they either thought that they could handle the amount that they had, they didn't know what it was or whatever, but nobody, generally people don't intentionally overdose. You know, you have those instances where people are trying to commit suicide and need ongoing services, but that's largely not the majority of that population, right?
Right.
And when overdose happen, it's usually by accident, it's usually by lack of education or just misjudging what they're using, right?
Mm-hmm.
So providing
Mm-hmm.
more education around, if you're going to use, here are ways to do it safely, completely falls into that area of harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to talk more about it, right?
Yeah. Can you break down for people who are listening who may not know what is harm reduction?
So harm reduction is a way to kind of reduce the risk that people expose themselves to with regards to any behavior. So when we
Yeah.
think about harm reduction in the area of substance use, we're thinking about like needle exchange programs. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
using a used needle that could possibly transmit HIV or a Hep C or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
turn in that old needle and get a new needle that we know
Right.
is safe and clean that has been sterilized, right? So
Right.
using concepts like that, it's the same approach as when we talk about safe sex practice and we talk about the use
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
condoms or barriers between sexual intercourse. So the idea of harm reduction is not new, and it
Right.
really looks at how we as a society really look at and embrace the issues that are impacting our community. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, harm reduction in itself is, it literally goes hand in hand with that social work perspective. So when we're talking about meeting a client where they are, that harm reduction process does that. So if a client comes to me and they're like, "Hey, Dr. Anthony, I really been thinking about cutting back on my use, and instead of using heroin 7 days a week, I want to use it 4 days a week."
Mm-hmm.
As a
Mm-hmm.
clinician, I
Right.
would really want them to engage in abstinence, but I also have to meet them where they are, because I could say,
Mm-hmm.
"No, you need to go 100% abstinence," and guess what happens? That client walks out the door, and I don't see them anymore.
Right. Right.
If I am open and I'm using a harm reduction approach, and I can, help that client to see, what, we can work with this as a goal. And then right when we get down to 4 days a week, they may want to drop down to 2 days a week. But it's really
Mm-hmm.
meeting that client where they are and embracing this harm reduction approach that helps people to, again, engage more in treatment, because now I'm not being judged for what I'm doing. And
Right.
I'm able to make the choice on how I want to use in a way that is meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes we miss that mark, right? Sometimes we miss that mark
Right.
saying, oh, you need to be in this level of care, you need to go to inpatient. And that may not be what that person needs at that time. I mean,
Yeah.
clinically, but are they ready for it, right? So when we think
Right.
about meeting a client where they are and providing them what they need to be able to be safe, that's a very different perspective.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think it's so helpful, and it definitely is a practice. And I'd love to pick up a little bit more around like substance use in teens. So I work at a high school, and that's been the conversation is like, I think it's the challenge, right? How do you talk to youth who are engaged in smoking weed, right? Where they say this is kind of part of the culture.
Right.
And I did have one client who was smoking a lot, and so we were able to use a harm reduction model because he was smoking right before school, and then it was just like it would just mess his day. So okay, so and we've had to talk about, okay, what is the impact, like and also use his language. What are you noticing what happens when you smoke in the morning before school? And
Right.
so he could name, like, yeah, it does affect my day. And so we were able to say, okay, so when there's other times that you can smoke, then that will not affect your school performance because you wanted to graduate, right? It was impacting a goal that you had. So that's how harm reduction, can play out, as you mentioned, for clients. So I'd love to talk a little bit about, any data that you have around teens and marijuana, what you notice in terms of the pandemic. Yeah, give us some of the, what are some of the things that you're seeing around substance abuse in our communities?
So, I don't have any recent data around the pandemic because we
Hmm.
haven't been able to do research like that. But
Hmm.
what we have seen is that the use of marijuana has been slightly increasing among youth, um, and it's honestly not that surprising. Marijuana and alcohol have traditionally been
Hmm.
what they call gateway drugs, right? So
Right.
they kind of they could possibly lead to the use of more or different
Right.
types of substances.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the thing that was most interesting, especially as it pertains to COVID, was how states responded to COVID by easing up and making access to alcohol more
Alcohol.
available, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I found that that was interesting, and I looked at it from two sides, right? If I'm a person that is uh, experiencing an alcohol use disorder and I need alcohol, right? An immediate shutdown could send me to withdrawal and,
Mm-hmm.
could be harmful. So I see it from
Mm-hmm.
that side. But the other side of it too is, if I am a person that is in recovery and, now we're in this stay at home order and I'm isolated and I don't have the same supports that I
Mm-hmm.
have. So, the idea of uh,
You get
mutual
access.
aid groups, 12-step AA, NA groups were kind of shut off too, right? So I don't have the same supports that I have. So now
Mm.
the use of alcohol is much more accessible. So does it then create a opportunity for a recurrence or something like that? Um, and I think that what that did was just it really made me think about it from a policy and kind of legislative standpoint around how we define essential services and what does that look like, right? Because the other part of it too, and this was less publicized, was that in Maryland, in particular, medical dispensaries for marijuana were still open and operating because they're considered within that healthcare realm, right? So, I think that
Mm.
COVID certainly highlighted and made me think more deeply around policy and legislation and access.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see, a lot more of this and have much more in-depth conversations about, what medical marijuana may look like, what alcohol use may look like, um, and then, just thinking back to the youth, youth are still able to access marijuana from the street, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that I still tell my youth to this day is, the marijuana that we're seeing today in 2021 is not the same marijuana that they were smoking back in Woodstock, right? Today's
Mm-hmm.
marijuana is much more potent and has it could be have different additives and things like that. So it's very,
Right.
and it could impact them in a different way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you hit on that point, right? The additives, right? It's not you're not just getting the weed, right? And someone I can't remember where I was just hearing this recently, but it's like, the reason for that is like people, people who are distributing, they want you to get hooked. So they're doing what they can to make that stronger and to make that addiction more. We're seeing, I don't know, I'm curious, if you're seeing, but we're seeing more, one, definitely more use. We've had a few students, parents who share like, increased use, like daily use, where they might not have had that daily use if they were in school.
Mhm.
But also some psychosis reactions to smoking marijuana. And so I'm curious if you've seen any increases in that or that connection.
I mean, certainly there can be an association made between substance use and psychosis, right?
Hmm.
And I think it really is going to depend on the person. I think that we've seen it in the public when it came down to the use of spice and K2. Uh,
Hmm.
so we've seen that made public, but we haven't seen it as much with marijuana and things like that. But we know that these substances can impact the mind. They can impact the way that people respond to them, and it really is going to vary on an individual level. So the example that I can give you is that if I was to go out and smoke weed, right, it would impact me one way. But if you were to go
Hmm.
out and smoke weed and your body is telling you,
Right.
"Hey, this is super awesome. I love this," you could have a very different reaction than I do. And
Yeah.
the clearest example is the use of alcohol, right? The age of 21 is kind of a milestone for a lot of people, and everybody's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, when I turn 21, I'm gonna have my first drink." Somebody's first drink could be a shot, and they're like, "Oh, this is awful. I'm never doing it again. The hangover is
Hmm.
not worth it." And then other
Right.
people had that shot, be like, "Woo, this is the best thing ever," and really just
Right.
go down two totally different paths. So I think that as we think about substances, it's certainly important to think about not only the psychosocial aspects of it, but the biological aspects of it too,
Hmm.
and how it impacts people internally.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to talk a little bit about recovery. I know you are the executive director or CEO. Correct
Yep.
my title of a treatment center. So tell us a little bit about your work there and what are some interventions that you found helpful?
Yeah, so I do have a behavioral health treatment center in East Baltimore. It's called Next Step Treatment, and that really, well, it really is a treatment center that focuses on addressing behavioral health. So we have, and from a holistic standpoint,
Hmm.
so we have mental health services, we have substance use services, we have psychiatric rehabilitation services, we have mentoring services, we have medical services, and really just looking at serving the community from a holistic perspective, right? A lot of times when our clients come in, they haven't been engaged, or they haven't seen their primary care doctor in quite some time. So having nurse practitioner and doctors on staff that can see them and treat them and get them started on medications or tend to wounds is a huge help, because it could be a couple of weeks or a couple of months before they could get on their doctor's schedule or even find a primary care physician. So I think that being able to be a one-stop shop and kind of look at being a treatment provider holistically has helped to kind of shape the way that we also engage in the community. And I think that it's important to talk about, not only do we provide services to the community, but we also engage in the community in a way of having and sponsoring community events, so back to school
Hmm.
drives,
Hmm.
really immersing ourselves in the community and being a part of the community. uh, because again, certainly you can pop a treatment center anywhere and hope that it does well. But I think
Yeah.
part of why we do so well is that we engage in the community. The community knows who we are. They know what we do. They know that we're here for them if we need to. And even if we're not the service, even if we're not the agency for you, we can certainly help get you connected to other services as well, right? So being really
Yeah.
connected and making the community comfortable with us. And that's partly why in our building, we actually created a youth area where they can come play video games, kind of hang out and things like that. This is all pre-COVID. We haven't had
Hmm.
anybody in over a year inside the building, right? Uh,
Okay.
but pre-COVID, having the kids come and kind of hang out, but and that was more so just giving them a safe environment to come to after school.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
know about the Baltimore area, we do experience challenges with community violence.
Yeah.
Uh, and also, there's a lack of resources for youth after school, like
Right.
recreational centers and things like that. So, really just kind of trying to create a safe space
Yeah.
where kids in the community can kind of thrive and come to. We do, Thanksgiving meal. We do Christmas meals where we invite the whole community in, and we have a whole lot of food that people can come. And it's really,
Yeah.
we make it so that anybody from the community can come, whether your socioeconomic status is really high or it's really low, and this is maybe the only meal that we won't know, right? Because we're going to provide it to the
Hmm.
community regardless.
Yeah.
Um, and really
That's
just creating a space where everybody is family.
yeah. That sounds like it sounds like you understand what the community needs and then you respond to that. So that sounds really great. Thank you for sharing that resource. How long has the center been open? How old
Uh,
are you?
what are we? We're in year 4 now.
Okay. That's
Long,
amazing.
long 4 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, wow, that's great. Again, love to highlight the work that you're doing, and part of these conversations is about highlighting the work of mental professionals and the work that they're doing to heal communities of color. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm looking at the time. So this is a question I ask all of my guests, and we ask you to think about a personal struggle that you've had to face, that you've had to deal with, and tell us, how did you overcome it? How did you work through it? And kind of what strategies did you use to kind of recover or to heal from that struggle?
And so, I thought about this question a lot, right? And I think that, for me, uh, COVID was really tough. Uh,
Hmm.
and I say that because COVID left us with a lot of uncertainty around how we're going to function as a clinic. So um, for me, it was more so, I think, well, not really, I think, for me, COVID left me with a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and really, worrying about what's next, right? So,
Hmm.
just a background. So, the clinic, my wife works at a hospital, so she is constantly in and out of, patients' rooms with COVID, and really the
Mm-hmm.
kids are being at home in homeschooling. So figuring out childcare while we are both,
Mm-hmm.
out in the community, how to keep your community safe. And that created a lot of challenges. So for me, I think one of the more difficult things was recognizing that, hey, you know what, this is impacting you more than what you realize, and we need to do something to kind of rectify that. So, again, right? So this is where
Mm-hmm.
mentorship and having somebody to talk to is important, right? So, talking to my mentors, talking to my green, I really had to reevaluate and change up the routines of my life, right? So for
Yeah.
me, COVID definitely made me much more stagnant. And like for me, I had to start working out more. I had to start getting out more in outdoors, really
Yeah.
just the things that are fun and uplifting, not working on the weekend. So trying to, not really force myself, but be intentional about how I spend my
Mm-hmm.
time on the weekends, spending more time with family and kids. And I think it kind of recentered me in terms of the work that I do. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
overall, you know, COVID or not, right? I think that I am much more open to who I am now as a professional and as a person in terms of
Mm-hmm.
having that healthy work-life balance than who I was pre-COVID. And I think that, even after COVID, I'm going to be intentional around protecting my space and having that, setting those boundaries so I can have a good work-life balance. And I think that's important to talk about because in the work that we do, a lot of times we don't take that time, and we think that work-life balance is, oh, I took a vacation last year, right? And it's much more to self-care and having a work-life balance, but I think that there's also intentionality to it, right? So
Yeah.
not taking my laptop, to bed when I'm getting ready to go to bed, being intentional, not answering emails, right? Because again, I had to keep it in my mind. If it was that important, they would call me. They wouldn't send the email. So keep all that
Right.
active when it comes to, you know, being really intentional about protecting your space and making sure that as a provider, I'm also doing well because, COVID impact everybody. So,
Yes.
I show up in the workspace is also going to dictate my interactions with the clients, right? So if I'm not well, it's not going to show up well when I'm interacting with clients.
Right. Right. So I heard exercise, getting outdoors, setting boundaries on evening work and weekend work, and prioritizing that family time.
Yes.
Yeah, so important. And sometimes, one of the things that, I tell my clients and the people that I work with is like, and if you miss a day, it's okay. Like just start over the next day, right? Because sometimes it can be so hard, like the perfection thing can be so hard. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's been a lot. And I think for me, I had just launched InnoPsych in January of 2020. And then, a few months later, so I was like, I was definitely grinding and had to like take a step back and really think about, I mean, it's an ongoing process for me as I'm trying to grow a business, right? It's like, it's not like a conversation with myself and then done. I'm like, I have to keep having that conversation with myself to make sure that I'm holding on to the things and the priorities that I want for both family and work.
No, for sure. And I think, the other part of it too is really so I guess well, not I guess this is one of my coping strategies. Uh I love music, and I'm talking about
Hmm.
I really love music, like to the point where I can sit at home and listen to music all day because music takes me to a different place and kind of speaks to me. So
Yeah.
I think back to when you asked, what kind of song did I want you to play when you first came on, and you said something to get you upbeat. I was like, I'm kind of in a chill mood, and I could easily go back to this song of Summertime because it literally puts me in this mood of being kind of chill, relaxed, and all that good stuff. So for me, when I'm also feeling pretty stressed out, I'll cut on music and just vibe.
Yeah. Nice. Love it. Love it. Well, I was going to ask you your favorite strategy. So you already answered that question. And it's funny that you say that because I have definitely gotten back into music during COVID. It's, in my commute, I often would listen to books on tape because I love, like, it's my way to read and, be able to tap into that piece. And so I never really listened to music, but being home, and my daughter loves having these dance sessions. So I like started introducing them to music that I grew up with. I actually introduced them to Parents Don't Understand, and they loved it. So it's just been fun kind of teaching them and sharing my music with them. And so we all have playlists now. So whenever we're in the car, I'm like, okay, so who wants a song from their playlist? So I love that you're sharing that. And Bob Marley we have these journals coming out next month. Bob Marley, and one of these quotes is in there. Bob Marley says, one good thing about music is when it hits, you feel no pain. And I just love that because it's so true. It's so true. So, we're almost out of time. So any questions from folks who are here, you can on mic or put it in the chat. Should we get Demetrius? We put Demetrius on the spot as a young social worker coming up. But any questions that we have, or Roberta Green, who's been in social work for a long time, and as I said, has been a mentor to me as well. So Demetrius, any questions or anything you want to share with us and with our audience?
Hello, everyone. I have no questions, but I do want to say I appreciate you all for doing this presentation. It was very insightful, and I definitely had to come on and support my brother Estreet. And and now by supporting him, I am now in tune with you, Dr. Jackson. So
awesome, for sure.
That's very good. I wasn't in tune with it at first, so it definitely is a bridge.
For sure. Tell us a little bit. Are you in school, or where are you at in your training or profession?
Mm-hmm. So I am currently I'm out of school. I graduated from Bowie State as well in 2019. Mm-hmm. And then I went to University of Georgia, where I attended the MSW program, Master of Social Work. And I graduated from there in 2020 of May. So I'm completed the training almost. Just gotta get my license. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Very good. Very good. Welcome to the field. We are excited to have you. Great. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Nicolette, I see here. I think that's one of my sister's friends. She's a physician in Jamaica. Roberta, you have anything to add? I'm putting you guys on the spot right now. Renee, you want to share anything with us? Yeah, we'd love to hear any comments or any questions that you have for us.
Hi, it's Roberta. I don't have any questions. I thought it was really good. Thanks for putting me on blast, Charmaine.
Of course.
I thought it was really good. I like the harm reduction approach. I really like that, because you're so right. Sometimes people just not ready. And in social work, we feel like you got to be ready. You got to do this right here, and we lose a lot of people that way.
Yeah.
So I really like that approach.
Great. Thanks. Thank you. Good to see you as always, Roberta. Yes. So let me see. So any last words before we close out, Dr. Anthony?
No, I mean, I think that I want to encourage everybody to continue to take care of themselves, and however they show up in the community and do their work, do it from a place of authenticity and passion, right? I think one of the things that anybody who has met me and really heard me speak about the work that I do can say that I have the passion for this, right? I may not necessarily like the politics of it, but I definitely have the passion to work with and to walk alongside people on their journey to wherever that may be, right? And becoming the best version of themselves. And really that's part of it, right? So just becoming part of their journey and respecting their journey. And really, just taking time to honor the work that we do, right? Because it's not everybody's calling to work with people in any way, shape, form, or fashion, right? And when you are called on to do the work, honor your calling and honor the work that you're doing, and understand that, we're really impacting the lives of people, like directly. And that's important.
Yeah, and I hear, and I would add to that is, like, if you're going to do the work, show up with excellence, right? Like, what's the impact that you're going to make? Because our communities are really needing this, and we need people who are in it to, like, support and promote healing and thriving, not just, to push papers or to do what's been done, right? How are we also reflecting on our professions and decolonizing it? Like, how are we challenging how we've been trained, and making sure that what interventions that we're putting out there, that they actually represent our communities. I think that's been a main point for me as well in my work. So excited to have you on again. Congrats on next step Treatment Center and also Black Therapy Today. You know, I'm going to be following you and looking for all the new developments. And again, we'll be happy to share all those resources on InnoPsych as well. So thank you all for joining us today on Thriving Thursdays. We're going to take a break next month in April. We're going to kind of regroup, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So definitely look out for new programming that we will be supporting as well. We do have, I will share with you, if you guys join our video, we created a video to promote mental health in the Black community. So I'm always, you know, making sure that we're seeing that. So make sure to stay tuned to InnoPsych and all the things that we have coming up. Thank you all for being here.